Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching the evening news with me, Sumita Karir, on News Now. And this is, of course, our budget special segment. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the economic survey for 2023-24 in the Parliament today. In fact, the survey indicates the resilience of the Indian economy. India's real GDP growth came in at 8.2% for FY24, while global economic growth was registered at 3.2%, and that's for CY23. Now, yet another highlight of the survey was that the nation's industrial growth, which was recorded at 9.5% in the previous fiscal year. Meanwhile, the survey projects India's FY25 real GDP growth to be around 6.5 to 7%. Additionally, the survey also stated that focus should remain on job creation in the country and skill building. It also emphasized on growth in the energy space. And according to that survey, India's energy needs are now expected to grow 2 to 2.5 times by 2047. To take these takeaways across, let's take these takeaways across to our guest and discuss these further on what the budget could have in store for the industry and what do these findings of the economic survey mean for the economy. I'm now joined by Rumki Majumdar, the economist at Deloitte India. Thank you very much, Ms. Majumdar, for joining us this evening. I want to understand from you, before the interim budget, there was a call to temper expectations, but now you have the full budget of NDA 3.0. What do you think? Will this budget deliver on announcements? And, what kind of compulsions would the government really have on its hands, given that it is a coalition government?
Thank you so much for having me over. Yes, all eyes are on the budget that will be announced tomorrow, and lots of expectations as well. But what we believe is that there will be emphasis on policy continuity, given the fact that the government has been extremely prudent about its spending. Today's economic survey suggests that the revenue deficit has declined, its share of capex spending has gone up, and that is something which will continue going forward. There is pressure to boost the consumption spending. Rural demand has remained tepid over the last few quarters, given the fact that the agriculture output has remained quite low because of the intermittent rains. And that is something which concerns the government as well. And that's what the government will probably be focusing on by creating more jobs, especially in the rural sector. And one of the ways would be to boost agriculture productivity through right policy measures, digitization. Again, infrastructure spending will also help in boosting jobs in the economy as well. So what we believe is more long-term activities, long-term prospects that the government has, vision that the government has, and that is something which will emphasis on in its policies.
Right, Ms. Majumdar, the economic survey, now coming to the economic survey, that has projected 6.5 to 7% growth for FY25. But industry experts who've been speaking to say that India can very well do an 8% as well. What is your take on the kind of economic growth that India can take, of course, bearing in mind the risks that are there?
Absolutely. In fact, even we are very optimistic about economic growth. And even in the economic survey, they have put out a disclaimer that they are being conservative. And there are reasons to it, because the first 6 months of the fiscal year has been lot more uncertain because we have had elections. Now we are having a budget. So only after the budget announcements that there will be some policy certainty going forward. So these all will help the second half of the growth. Again, in the second half, we will see US elections getting out of the way. The US Fed may also cut policy rates. So that would help in capital inflows into the country. We will see a lot more pronounced participation in the global bond index. So all these will have an impact on how much money that flows into the country, how much investment that picks up, reforms that will take shape and will show up in private capex. And hence, we are very, very, very positive about growth in the second half of the year. And that will probably help India grow over 8% is what we're expecting.
over 8% is what you're expecting. And when you
Sorry,
mentioned US
7%.
elections,
My
Ms.
bad. My
Majumdar,
bad.
of
Sorry.
course, there are fears of a return of a possible 7%. Okay, okay.
7%.
There
Sorry.
are, but when you talk about the risks, there are fears of a Trump presidency return. Trump's return to as being the president of the United States, and that could perhaps start a tariff war. Well, those are just some of the concerns, but yes, larger geopolitical risks remain, those related to the Middle East, those related to elections being in several countries. But let's also focus on one of the important aspects of what CEA said about job creation. Economists have, of course, spoken for a very long time about a jobless growth that India is seeing. What kind of initiatives do you think the government will look at tomorrow as far as addressing the jobs crisis is concerned? I'm of course referring to the CMIE survey that recently stated that India may be on a 7% growth path, but India will not be able to create 12 million jobs which are needed, and as against that, only 8 million jobs will be created. So what is your assessment or your view of how could the government really be looking at resolving this issue and perhaps be coming up with policy incentives and initiatives?
Right. So if you have noticed, India actually had transitioned in a very different way. The growth path has been very different from what historically has been in the other part of the world. So if you look at India, which was a very agri-centric nation earlier, it leapfrogged into the service-driven economy. And that is something which has been a sector where its contribution to GDP where is around 57%, 58% of GDP, whereas the employment that it's creating is close to 30, 35%. So a large proportion of the population who were primarily in the agri sector, they have not been absorbed because of this. They are either unskilled or semi-skilled. That's why the government recognized that and has been emphasizing on manufacturing for a while now. Since 2019, we have seen schemes like PLI schemes, where emphasis is on boosting manufacturing sector, both in labor intensive as well as high end manufacturing. The idea is that there has to be opportunities given to people where they can so that their income in the long term can be improved. And we expect in the budget as well that there will be quite a few broadening of the PLI scope so that they can bring in MSMEs into the benefits. And also they are kind of looking at boosting some of the sectors like leather, footwear, textiles, where PLI schemes impact has been limited. And this is where I think the government will focus as well going forward.
Right, and perhaps there's also been a chorus that's building around employment-linked initiative on the lines of PLI that could also perhaps turbocharge the job sector. Ms. Majumdar, let me also ask you about AI, because that was also a very, very prominent part of CEA's speech. He said that AI casts a huge pall of uncertainty over impact on workers across skill levels, that is low, semi, and high. In your opinion, is the government shooting from AI's shoulder to really absolve itself of the deep jobs crisis? And how is this going to play out as far as India is concerned?
See, the technology transformation that we have seen is not unique. I think every part of the world is facing this crisis of how to deal with the rapid change in technology that we have seen over the last a few years. And with AI, specifically Gen AI, we have seen there is a shift in the nature of work, the kind of jobs that we do, and it requires a very different kind of skills to be ahead in the game. And that is why the government has been emphasizing on initiatives that can help in improving technical skills. And so initiatives like AI skills, providing vocational training, all these will help in ensuring that a large segment of the population gets skilled. There is a very interesting statistics which kind of tells that AI penetration in India, it is probably the highest, is the third highest in after US and China, which kind of tells that we are already ahead of the fact that there is that there is a technology transformation and we are kind of coping with, but we have a large population to upskill, and that's why just not government. I think there is a ask from the private sector to also pitch in into this effort, and I think a lot of private companies are allocating resources for their workforce to be trained and upskilled so that they can adapt to the situation and build the future of the workforce.
Absolutely, Ms. Majumdar, rightly said. And jobs, as you're also stating, and skilling is going to be a key focus for India as it wants to leapfrog into the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047, as the Prime Minister was stating this morning. So focus on this sector is going to be important. Of course, the opposition has also been hammering at the government as far as the lack of jobs, lack of appropriate jobs are concerned. This was a big election issue as well. On that note, thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us this evening and discussing the way forward for the country and, of course, expectations from the budget.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.